I do kind of feel like per medium, it's respectful to spend a few years paying dues, although there are a lot of media, and it won't be possible to pay dues for every single medium, you know? Social media, we can have a relationship with the major media platforms, major social media platforms like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, X, what else? Blue Sky. So I have spent a few years on each of those and posted a lot. I posted a lot. And I have been posting to communicate with an audience. So I haven't just been flinging garbage. Hopefully not. I've, you know, I want to be able to reflect on the things that I create and have that feel like it is constructive. So when I post, I do try to be mindful of why I might post. Generally, towards the concept of intergenerational media literacy these days, and wondering about how I can relate to my own experiences and view myself as an intergenerational subject, like over time. Transgenerational? Theoretically, concept of this video, pay dues, actually have a relationship with the media that you want to extend relationship with. And like it is possible for us to develop meaningful relationships with exchange. So with that in mind, the detail that we put into the work that we produce and make available somehow to the world and describing those channels clearly, making it possible for people to copy us and like actually have a structure that they can feasibly follow. So when I say make the number of videos on my YouTube roughly at the pace with roughly the amount of attention that you think that I put towards it, ideally that would be feasible, and ideally that would clarify that it can build fluency, it can build ease into TikTok. That's what happened with me. When I started making videos on YouTube, it was easier to make videos on TikTok, and TikTok is where I met people. And meeting people, actually having a creative network, a group of people, not even just a group, like a whole bunch of people, a category of people basically, that can model the kinds of things that can make your career sustainable is so valuable. So, if you are intentional about the ways you relate to the algorithms, you can actually meet people who are modeling the kinds of behaviors that can make a career sustainable. And with that, expecting to get paid by the media is kind of like expecting to get paid by paper. Paper isn't the thing that pays you, the things you do with paper are. So we have media and we can support infrastructure. So that is just part of it. Like, if you aren't investing into the features that they make available to the people who support them, do you have an accurate model for how that ecosystem exchanges economic value? Maybe not. Then, like, what are the relationships that feel classic, are describable, that we want to see in the world? How do we make it possible for everyone to exchange the ways that they, I don't know, etc.? I feel like TikTok has some pretty good, has a decent track record. The number of people, the number of conversations that have gone well, and the ways that it exists as a medium, I appreciate. And there are learnable patterns that kind of are generalizable roughly across the social media. In this video, paying dues per medium, having a relationship to creation, the reasons why the people who interact with your products care about their quality, which qualities are fun to share, are fun to build, are rewarding to actually consider. Like, can I make this? Yeah, actually, it would take a while. Do I have the skills? Can I add my own flair to it? And with this, something that I think is going to pop up just as a culture is people listening to audiobooks and real-time vibe coding alongside the book, and listening to the same series of books a few times and building out that world while they continue to immerse themselves in a particular fictional part, oh, a particular fictional aesthetic, which will be something to mind communicatively. What are the anchors towards shared experience and grounded emotional resonance that we need to mind? But those aren't necessarily new problems. Those are like, and when I say problems, I mean like from a mathematical perspective. Can you solve them? Can you solve emotional resonance? Can you solve emotional stability across a population? Maybe. mm, I don't know. We can try to build structures that make emotional groundedness more accessible and study what, I don't know, talk about it. As we consider product design, we can have conversations about which apps we enjoy using. I notice websites that, well, I like being able to build my own apps, and the amount of context that I feel I need to exchange. I appreciate that there are a few social media platforms that I can learn. And while I might be frustrated at the concept of like not that many niche sites existing, I do kind of wonder what we communicate when we just fling an experience into the void and say anyone can walk into this experience. Is that like clowns abandoning a carnival? When I designed Boonhonk, I'm kind of thinking about what if clowns don't tend to abandon carnivals, but carnivals get visited less and the clown spirit becomes grounded more by the architecture of the carnival and the landscape. And Boonhonk can be a goose hybrid, like a goose futurism, like a solar punk. I'm going to work on this a little bit more. This concept is interface design and its relationship to genre development in a novel media landscape. And the concept here is that I can make videos like this and brainstorm new ideas and wonder with Gemini, believing that there can be a meaningful summary from these videos. And the advantage of me wondering these is that I do practice engaging creatively and having conversations with dozens of creative people per week, depending on the week. Not every week do I have conversations with dozens of people. I often, well, there are a lot of ways to interact with people and a lot of media, and producing a lot of media every day means that there are going to be some interactions with a variety of people. But, like, what's a conversation, you know? Which is why I do appreciate having a team, because there are structures that are more conversational, and I do put more, I do feel like putting more towards exchange is more rewarded. So I do feel a bit more motivated. And then since I have the muscle and, like I'm improvising this video, I can make videos like this and describe. Oh, yeah, by the way, you can buy art directly from artists and have conversations with artists, and that actually is pretty cool, depending on their energy. And if you pay artists, then they have more energy, but not infinite energy. And paying people to like dance for you like you are the rich person is just kind of like not the dynamic. So culturally, you can get on TikTok and have conversations with people and see like how things flow. Send heart me's, send gifts, and see like, is this weird? I don't know. Does it feel weird? Is it easy to have that conversation? Some people won't have energy for a variety of purposes. Like I have, ooh, Do I need to get into this? This is a maybe longer video. I don't always have the energy to have conversations with people who I haven't already established relationship with in some form or rapport with in a specific creative and productive thread, because there have been a lot of projects started over the years, and I appreciate energy, and I can introduce a lot of people to a lot of people. And it's probably a better idea to have events where different clusters of motivation can interact with similar motivation. But after a while, I would like to actually make progress in the projects that have legs. Like and I'm imagining a house standing on a pier. I think the walking houses are pretty interesting, and the mechanics of that I wonder about. Are they like elephants? Are they more like trees? And that might sound insane, I don't know. But considering the relationship with media and evocative frames and multiple people interacting with the same larger concept, like we have more ability as collectives when we interact with each other's work. And also, we do have individual identities and we do have energies that we have practiced minding for years as adults. Although some do have kids, so however, I don't have kids yet. I can reflect on both and consider the ways that we co-regulate energy. But all of those systems are like going on. Those are systems. I can say things like it would help to have financial support, and someone can wonder why. And I can say that I'm doing all this stuff, and someone can say, ooh, well, why don't you do something else? And maybe I will, but also I can describe rolling these structures out. I can describe you can make a Patreon and have things that people look forward to and have a main product that people can purchase once and update. That can be an anchor for context. You can have a main product that anchors the context for what you're working on and post that to GitHub and have that open source, but not really explain it, and then post updates on your Patreon and then have that be clarifying. And people who are curious about that kind of thing, like media nerds, can actually relate to that pace of development and make their own thing. And someone can say, why should I pay you? And I've described that in this video, and we'll continue making other videos. And someone else can ask me why they should pay me, and so on and so forth. So I do need to try to find ways to secure contracts to get my team paid towards getting these films created, getting these films to be productive ecosystems of creative economy. And in the meantime, can describe marketing. Like that's the thing that I've been practicing. Describing ideas in ways that are less technical, which does require warming up. And it has been difficult to enter frames where warming up has been accessible. So, it's like those patterns where you don't have the space to do the thing and then you do the thing poorly. And then people say, well, maybe you shouldn't be doing the thing. You're like, I'm not trying to do it poorly. I'm just not in the space. And they're like, maybe you're not in the space because you do it poorly. I got fired from a job because they were like, you're deliberately performing poorly. And I was just isolated, lonely, low energy. I had a rhythm, found a rhythm, was in the process of looking into diagnosis. Kind of thankful that I didn't, because I've since learned new things about my patterns and what I can possibly do to manage them. Like which language I already have access to, and what I am likely to describe and which things are easy for anyone to work with. Like, how do I say, oh, yeah, drawing with people was helpful? Do I get that diagnosed? Maybe I should just be drawing with more people. My car got totaled in 2020, and I learned that when it isn't very easy to see people, it's a lot easier to just not see people. And that's frustrating to learn because I was upside down on an auto loan because I didn't know that was possible. Because. And then I can say, like, yeah, actually, there was a string of unknowns, and not knowing these things did actually add a lot of runtime overhead. And reflect on the amount of time that I've spent considering compilers and interpreters and language design and say, wow, actually, having structured concepts of what might possibly exist does kind of remind me of the reasons why I've needed to mind the languages that I've studied in computer science. It can be difficult to find a project that feels worthwhile to study for a long time, and I can recommend exploring language and seeing if there's a physical model that works with describing the details of language that you care the most about. Now we have video language more accessible, so the floor of communication relative to where I started, like if I consider starting learning how to code or what code kind of roughly was in 20, well, I guess with Scratch, that was like maybe eighth grade, so 2009 or 10. Can I consider that? Can I say that I've been a developer? Eh. Like I can say there are different linguistic skills that I started practicing at different times and also start to describe or define development in specific ways. However long, have I been coding my whole life? Have I been code switching my whole life? Is a question that I can't ask. But having a project that you would wonder about culturally, how do you relate to language? How do you express that? How do you place that into a frame that other people can interact with? How does that relate to hackathons? How does that relate to what you can study and what you can learn and what you can remember? It can be challenging to find motivation, and it is possible to find motivation. And making videos and finding people who can harmonize with your wonder can be very helpful. So, the real reason to pay dues to media, the media that you want to perform in, is so you actually have a relationship to something you can talk about with other people who are considering similar things. And the point of considering similar things isn't to consider them the same way. And sometimes considering similar things will be more frustrating because of inability to harmonize and for some reason. Which reflecting on it, I do appreciate being in band in school, playing the French horn, and being in something called solo and ensemble. Reflecting on that experience, I got practice playing the same piece with people who were about as familiar with it as I was. And it's been interesting to see some of them go on and develop new skills. And I wonder about where we might perform again. And with that, that is practice. That's creative practice. That is almost, yeah, actually, that is like 17 years old ish, maybe 16. So, as I reflect on the workbench that I've been developing for a while, since January 7th, I believe, I think I began prompting on January 3rd with Claude about swoop syntax, and on January 7th ish, I began actually committing to the workbench. So I started with a language seed concept, like a basically a research paper on the syntax concept, on the physics, actually, yes. And I developed the physics model last year and some wonder about how the metaphors might relate to the brace syntax and the symmetry and like a fractal universe kind of concept, and compared that to some of the photonics and phononic developments. So like the recent developments in computation and material design, material science. And I basically just explored what we could accomplish with Claude, what Claude, Codex, and I could accomplish for a while. I spent like $200. I didn't get the max plan, so it might have been, well, I feel like not getting the max plan gave me the number of personal checks to see, do I actually want to spend this money on development? Is this feature worthwhile? Do I want to plan on this? Do I want to plan with this more? And I was able to consult Codex concurrently, which had a different pace. Codex was a bit slower at actually making changes and had a lot of feedback. So I could read the feedback from Codex and compare that to what Claude was planning. Sometimes feed Claude's plan into Codex and have Codex implement parts of it. So those were options available. And I did a stretch of development to implement a text editor useful for publishing. And the unique concepts there were particular keyboard user experience, the keyboard navigability, and the ways that harmonized across the interface, and the idea that the editor could be more like a fidget toy than a serious editor, because we can point to other text editors like the JetBrains integrated development environment editors, or Visual Studio Code, VS Code, or Sublime, different ones for publishing, like, what is it, Atticus and Scrivener. Google Docs exists, Microsoft Word exists, Pages, I think, is Apple's. Also, the LibreOffice suite. So there are options, and I kind of figured if I could vibe code something that would cost $200 to develop and price that at around $16, a little bit more than $15, which is a price point that I would consider sandwich price. Ooh. And this is considering bit pricing. So something that's 2 times $8, which is, ooh, there is a thread on X about pricing that point. And that's probably going to change over the next couple of years. I made a video recently where I described asking ChatGPT 4 for a pricing table for a web developer, pretty much, based on my skills 2 years ago. And that came up on TikTok's On This Day feature. And mentioning pricing this workbench feels relevant. We'll see if that scales. Should I price it at $20? Anyway, that was posted on Patreon in January, and I haven't updated that specific interface in months. In the meantime, I've been focusing more on the user experience of Swoop on the back end with language server protocol plugins into IDEs. I subscribed to AI Ultra to do some agentic development with anti-gravity for a while, for a month. And I appreciated that. I'd like to do that again. So when I can afford that, that is something that I'm planning on investing into. Although there are different taste based developmental considerations. So I might wait a while for anti gravity to get new features and revisit that with a new mind because there are so many things that I could explore. And I know that I appreciate the tasteful UI design of Claude, and I appreciate the pragmatic backend engine. Well, okay, so that's lore that I'm injecting based on what I read. So I would like to be a bit more hmm, unbiased. That's not the word either. Biased with my own experiences. Is Codex specifically a better backend engineer? Codex has a different thread of pragmatics than Claude when it comes to UI design and the reasons why these the relationship with code seems to be different. It seems like they're going for different angles. There we go. Even with the name Codex kind of feels like you would consult a codex. So with that, it does feel like saying it's good for backend for existing as almost the soul of a knowledge base, while Claude is decent for the front end, for the front of a knowledge base. And saying soul has a lot of charge. Soul music, is that a concept that I can evoke to as a ooh. Now with the workbench, I think the main thing that I look forward to is updating it based on the plans that already exist and reading through the syntax and getting a feel for how Swoop actually might develop more. This is a long video. This is 27 minutes, and I know that I'm not going to want to edit this. Swoop is spelled SPW, capital S, lowercase pw, stylistically. I'm kind of curious if I can mention that and have Gemini pick that up. SPW. Anyway, cheers.